At the age of about 33, Yahweh the Messiah was sentenced to death. At the time of the crucifixion, it was the worst, most horrifying forms of execution ever devised. It was the worst way to die. Only the worst criminals were sentenced to be crucified. However, it was even more terrible for Messiah. Unlike other criminals sentenced to death by crucifixion, Yahweh the Messiah would be nailed on the stake by his hands and feet. Death by crucifixion usually came slowly and by a result of exposure and exhaustion. It often took 2 to 3 days for the victim to die, but death could be hastened by breaking the legs of the victim, making breathing much more difficult. The usual practice for the condemned person was to carry the stake to the place of execution, where he was affixed to it before being hoisted upon the vertical pole that was permanently fixed. Each nail was 6 to 8 inches long. The nails were hammered into his wrist, not on his palms as is commonly depicted in pictures. There is a tendon in the wrist that extends to the shoulder. Roman guards knew that when the nails were being inserted into the wrist, the tendon would tear and break, forcing Yahweh the Messiah to use his ribs for support so he could breathe. His 2 feet were nailed together. He was forced to lean on the only nail that tied his feet to the stake. Messiah could not support himself with his legs because of the pain, so he was forced to alternate arching his back. He wore out his legs just to continue to breathe. Can you imagine the struggle, the pain, the suffering, the courage that endured it? Yahweh, the Messiah, endured that reality for 6 hours. Yes, 6 hours. Can you imagine this kind of suffering? A few minutes before he died, Messiah stopped bleeding. Water just flowed from his wounds. John chapter 19 verse 34 says, "But one of the soldiers with a spear pierced his side, and forthwith came there out blood and water." From the common images, we see wounds on his hands and feet, and even the spear wound at his side. But before the nails and the spear, Yahweh the Messiah was whipped, and because the lashes were so severe, they tore flesh off his body. The beating so horrible he received on his face that it was ripped off, and his beard ripped from his face. Isaiah chapter 52 verse 14. "As many as were astonished at thee, his visage was so marred more than any man, and his form more than the sons of men." The crown of thorns embedded deep into his scalp. Most men would not have survived this torture. Messiah had no more blood to bleed. Only the water gushed out of his wounds. The adult human body contained about 4.5 liters, a little over a gallon of blood. Yahweh the Messiah shed all of his blood, had 3 nails inserted into his members, a crown of thorns on his head, and, in addition, a Roman soldier buried a spear into his side. All of this, not to mention the humiliation he suffered after carrying the stake for almost 1.25 miles, while the crowd spat in his face and threw stones at him. The stake he carried was almost 66 pounds in weight. Messiah had to endure this experience to open the gates of heaven so that you can have access to God. so that your sins may be washed and carried away, every single one of them without exception. Do not ignore this. Yahwah the Messiah died for you. Isaiah chapter 53 verse 5, but he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. Please go back and read all of Isaiah chapter 53. It tells you about the great suffering of our Savior and Messiah Yahweh. John chapter 3 verse 16. For God, Elohim in the Hebrew, so loved the world, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Romans chapter 5 verses 6 through 8. For when we were yet without strength, in due time Messiah, Mashiach in the Hebrew, died for the ungodly. For scarcely for a righteous man will one die, yet peradventure for a good man some would even dare to die. But Elohim commended his love toward us, in that while we were yet sinners, Mashiach died for us. Please meditate on that. But Elohim commended his love toward us, and that while we were yet sinners, Mashiach died for us. He did not wait for us to get right. He died for us before we came to him. And it's not his will that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. Ephesians chapter 1 verse 7. In whom we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins according to the riches of his grace. John chapter 1 verse 9. If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us of our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. At this point, I want to encourage each and every one that is watching this to take time and to confess your sins to Yahweh, because he is faithful and just to forgive us of our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness by the blood of his Son, Yahweh HaMashiach. Acts chapter 2 verse 38. Repent and be baptized every one of you in the name of Yahweh HaMashiach for the remission of sins, and ye shall receive the gift of the Holy Spirit. Mashiach died to save you. He loves you. Shalom.